Chris Brintle. Chris Brintle.
News Talk 1270, KIML. Don Carpenter Show. Chris should be coming through the door any second now. And a real journalist has joined us. A real sports journalist.
I wouldn't go that far.
Well, you're more of a journalist than I am. Actually, I have a question for you. And I mean, you've seen the story of the shootings in Lafayette, Louisiana, right?
Mm-hmm.
Okay, so I've decided that when I talk about these kind of events, whether the shooter kills himself or is shot by the police or a bystander or whatever, I'm not going to say their names. And here's my reasoning. You can tell me if I'm maybe overreacting a little bit. And I admit I might be overreacting a little bit. I mean, I doubt anybody that listens to me is capable of this kind of thing. I really do. I don't think, I don't think people that listen to morning talk radio really are the kind of people that do this kind of thing. But I just have this little thing in the back of my head that, I mean, these are psychopaths, and psychopaths tend to have narcissistic tendencies. Mm-hmm. They want everything to be about themselves. That's why they're so manipulative. That's why they won't blame they won't blame themselves for anything. They think they're perfect. Everything around them is broken. That's what they do. So I honestly think that there is a connection between, these nut jobs sitting at home watching TV, and every 5 minutes they see the face of, the shooter in Charleston, or the nut job in Colorado, especially this week with the sentencing phase of the trial in Colorado for that movie theater shooting. I don't think it's a coincidence that this happened last night when, the theater shooting was in the news all day yesterday. Right. And they keep saying this guy's name, keep saying his name. This nut job sits in his cheap hotel doing whatever crazy people do.
Probably sitting and rocking back and forth. I don't know.
Yeah. And he's, I could do that. I'd be as famous as that guy. And then, of course, as soon as any resistance comes up, he shoots himself. So I honestly think that, and I don't blame it on the media, but I think the media is part of why these guys are doing this and why it's so common.
Yeah.
Well, first off, it's not that common. It's still extremely rare for this kind of thing to happen, but it just seems like it's common because it happens every once in a while.
I think you're on the right track with this. I agree with pretty much exactly what you said, but I don't think it's really the issue of showing these people, mentioning their name. I don't think that's the issue. I think that's part of it, but I think it's covered too much. It's just the whole story's covered too. 3 people got shot. How many people got shot in Baltimore last night or Chicago? Now, there's shootings that happen every night on a nightly basis in almost every big city in this country. So, I just don't think it should be covered a whole lot. I think it happens. You give some live coverage, kind of like some of the news channels did yesterday or whatever. And then the next day, basically, it should turn into a side mention. You just mentioned that it happened. But what happens is they talk about it all night last night, and then they come in this morning, and not only do they report it, but then it's an all-day discussion that's going to turn into an all-week discussion that's going to turn political because it's going to be all about guns again. And we all know that
it already is.
It already is.
Within minutes.
Well, most media outlets, though, in this country are arms of the government. They really are. They're arms of the government. And so what does the government want to do? They want to take our guns away. And what better way to do that than to talk about a shooting, a tragic shooting all the time? And then that's one aspect of it. You have the other aspect that you cover a shooting. It's tragic. You get people, you tug on their heartstrings, and they'll watch.
Yeah.
I just don't understand. Why do we have a 24-hour news channel and we cover shootings like this? Yeah, it has to be covered, of course. Yeah, there should be some discussion about it, of course. But why? Why is it turned into a weekly thing? Why is it all week?
Well, it's here's the
nothing but a distraction.
Yeah. Now, have you ever? This is a fairly recent movie, but if you ever get a chance, watch a movie called Nightcrawler. Have you ever seen? Okay, Jake Gyllenhaal plays a kind of a loser kind of guy. He's self-educated. He took a bunch of business courses online, so he thinks he's smarter than he really is. But he's a little weasel. He's maybe a little bit of a psychopath, and he's a con man. In the beginning of the movie, he's selling stolen scrap metal for money, and he comes across a car accident, and a freelance video photographer's there, and he hears the video photographer selling news footage for money. So, well, I can do that. So he gets himself a camera and he goes into the freelance news business, and he ends up being really good at it. He's chasing crimes all over the place. And and I'm not going to spoil the ending, but just say, I think it's pretty well known even from the trailers of the movie. He starts actually being part of the crimes to give himself business.
Right.
So, and one of the things that the news people talked about in the movie is they didn't want him covering anything in the bad, quote unquote, bad neighborhoods. It was in L.A., so they said, well, we don't really need to know about shootings in Compton. We want to hear about something in the nice neighborhood where the rich people live, because that's what people on TV watch. So you mentioned Chicago. Let's talk about Chicago real quick. The week in progress right now, the week from last Saturday to today, the week in progress ends today. Shot and killed 2 people. Shot and wounded 39. So
wow.
41 shootings this week in Chicago, 2 murders. Year to date, 1,512 shootings, 261 homicides. So they're on pace for 500 murders this year.
That is tragic.
And we'll never hear about that.
Mm-mm.
We'll never hear about that because, again, this other thing in Louisiana is more spectacular and shocking. It's almost like we've gotten to the point where we expect Chicago to be like that.
Right.
And that's the problem. I mean, if they got the same kind of coverage that Lafayette, Louisiana, or Charleston, or Aurora, Colorado, or any of these other places got, people would be just completely disgusted by it.
Yeah.
I mean, they would be disgusted.
It's a good point.
But it'll never happen.
You brought up journalism. I mean, just basic journalism 101. Just take all the political stuff aside. To me, most shootings aren't covered because they shouldn't be covered by national media. So, Chicago shootings or Baltimore shootings or any big city shootings, yeah, they can't cover all of that. One, they don't have time. 2, it's more of a local story. I just don't understand why. I understand that if 9 people die in a shooting or it's a mass shooting and more than one person dies, I understand you probably have to cover it as a national media, but I don't think they're supposed to cover it to that extent. To me, it's more of a local story than it is a national story. But we all know why they do it. I mean,
yeah. Well, and of course, then there's also the sideshow of every time one of these things happens, and this happened about 9:00 our time last night. It was 10. They're an hour ahead of us, so it happened about 9:00 our time last night. It was right before I was going to bed. I looked at the Twitter feed on my phone, saw something was going on, looked into it. Within 5 minutes, the Bloomberg people were already calling for gun control, just asking for donations. I mean, this is the very definition of a ghoul is someone who does something like this. These people are ghouls.
They really are.
Yeah, I mean, that's the best word to describe them. They're ghouls.
And you see the type of fascist personalities on the left when a shooting like this happens, because you hear two things: gun control, gun control, gun control. And then the other thing is talking about, well, if you see something, say something. Basically, rat out your fellow people if they seem suspicious. Well, we should have known he was a psychopath. Look at him. Well, what did he do prior? Well, why would we know this? Why should we report suspicious behavior? Anybody does odd. I engage in odd behavior sometimes. You engage in odd behavior sometimes.
All the time.
I mean, should people like, well look, look here. He said this back on. It's just scary. It's like, why would we delve into somebody's personal life like that before something even occurred?
Yeah. Well,
to me, that's scary, because that's what happens first.
Yeah.
Before the government controls you, people rat on themselves.
Yeah.
And they rat on each other.
And to kind of take it full circle, when one of these, when an aspiring maniac is sitting at home watching all this on TV, they say, well, I've never accomplished anything in my life. I'm a loser. I don't get girls. I'm a drifter. Like this guy here in Louisiana was a drifter. He, is living out of a car in a hotel. I think they see this and something snaps in their crazy brains that says, well, I can have an effect on the country.
Right.
I can, they'll be talking about gun control, and maybe they can make changes, and I'll go down in flames for the greater good.
Yeah.
And then they think they're justified to do something like this. And that's why I don't like saying the names of these guys. And, other people will. That's fine. It's just my little way at getting back at them for thinking that they're going to get famous. They're not going to get famous on my back.
Yeah. Yeah. I think that's a good point. Very good point. They just want to feel like they've made a change or something, or like they're part of a cause. And then you mix that with the fact that most of them are on a lot of pills. Yeah. I mean, quite frankly, what shooter hasn't been on a lot of medications?
The Charleston shooter is a good example of
somebody abuse medications, I should say.
Yeah, the Charleston shooter is a good example of a guy that thought he was going to make a change.
Right.
And it didn't have anything to do with a flag. It had to do with he was crazy, and in some weird, twisted way, he thought that he could. Charles Manson's a good example of that. And he thought he was going to start helter-skelter by murdering people, which was his idea of a race war, where the black man would rise up and kill all the white people. Right. And that's what Charles Manson thought. That's why he did what he did. He was crazy.
Exactly. There's no rhyme or reason. And we started this worshiping of villains with Jesse James. We've always kind of worshipped. If you really think about it. Maybe worshipped is too strong a word. We've glamorized this type of stuff. We've always glamorized Jesse James. We glamorize serial killers. We glamorize mass shooters. It's because, you're kind of right about that. You say their name, you show their picture 25 times during a 24-hour newscast.
That's not a bad point. I don't know if glamorize is the right word, but all you have to do is look back to the 1930s with Al Capone and all those guys. Now that was glamorizing. That's definitely
Jesse James too. I would say Jesse James. We still talk about him to this day.
You make a good point with that, and of course, Rolling Stone putting the Boston bomber on their cover in a beefcake shot like that. That's why I think, I don't know if it's 100% why these things happen, but I do think it is a part of why these things happen. Evil people are always going to do evil.
Right.
But they don't need to be helped doing it.
Yeah, and I'll tell you one thing. We kind of touched on it a little bit, but if you're somebody that is using this to gain power politically or to get donations money-wise, something's wrong with you.
Well,
you're almost as psychotic as.
Well, maybe even more so because they're making a profit off it.
Yeah, just exploiting it, and it's just horrible.
The Bloomberg people, they nothing boils my blood more than someone that immediately takes advantage of a bad situation like this. Okay, what do we have going on in sports?
Well, we have an interview with a new Gillette Wild head coach.
Okay, sounds good. We'll see you, I think we'll see you in an hour. News Talk 1270, KIML.